Good afternoon. Welcome to this meeting of the Legislative Energy Commission. Today is Wednesday, February 7th. First order of business is approval of the minutes from November 9th. Representative Hornstein moves approval of the minutes from November 9th. Any discussion, corrections, changes, or additions, or subtractions? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Motion prevails. The minutes are adopted. Members, before we move on to our agenda today, I wanted to recognize we have two, I guess we'll call them temporary members to to the Legislative Energy Commission today. We have Representative Pugh and Representative Rumbeck sitting at the table with us today. They have a personal interest and they've carried some legislation regarding the issues that are one of the issues we'll be hearing today. So welcome to the commission. Thanks for being here today, and feel free to participate in any questions or enter the dialogue that takes place as you would if you were an official member of the commission. So. With that, the first item that we have on our agenda here is a review of information on grid security issues. The clock looks like we're at 3:12, so 30 minutes is the amount of time we have slated for the presentation. Is there going to be any problem getting that done in 30 minutes, or are we good to go?
We're good to go.
All right, well, welcome to the commission. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Okay, my name is Gale Nordling. I'm the president and CEO of Emprimus, a Minnesota company. I have with me also Nick Reel, who is the architect and the former mayor for Excelsior, and so of course we get lots of help from him. I thank all of you for the opportunity to come and speak on this subject. It's very important to us. My background is I have over 30 years of related experience in the utility industry. Emprimus is a research and development company. We were formed 10 years ago, primarily by an individual, George Anderson, who has a passion to protect the civil infrastructure, primarily the grid and computer systems. Let's talk a little bit about, you all have heard and seen pictures or seen for yourself northern lights. When you see northern lights, you're going to see that's the result of a solar storm. There's two different kind of solar storms. We're going to talk about the 100-year solar storm and the every year type of solar storm. And there are studies that show that the every year solar storm are causing billions of dollars of damage per year to customers in the United States. So that, of course, would translate to a substantial number in Minnesota. We're also going to talk a little bit about nuclear weapons. The new nuclear weapon, if detonated 300 miles over the earth, like in Kansas or Minnesota, wouldn't hurt you or I at all, but it creates an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse, which fries electronics and grid components, and it could come from a satellite, and it could come from countries such as Iran and North Korea. Why are we talking about Minnesota getting involved in grid protection? On a federal level, utilities, NERC, North American Electric Reliability Corporation, FERC, Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, DOE, DHS, DOD, and I can go down the list, are not doing anything for EMP, the nuclear side of this. On the solar side of this, they are also not doing anything on the every year solar storm. On the 100-year solar storm, I need to give you an analogy. The utilities and agencies have redefined what a 100-year solar storm is. So if Katrina would be the equivalent of a 100-year solar storm, they're talking about a tropical storm being a 100-year solar storm. And by doing that, they are then able to say, you know, we really don't need to do anything for the grid. We're ready for it. We're ready for that 100-year solar storm. We'll get into some details, but I just wanted to paint the picture to you as to why Minnesota might be interested. So let's look at the evidence. Congressional EMP Commission was formed in 2004 or 2001 and went for 4 years and was reestablished and went another 4 years through 2008. The full report has not been released as far as to the general public, but the unclassified portions talked about a couple things. The long-term power loss, the consequences are likely to be catastrophic to civilian society. A true 100-year solar storm or a nuclear EMP would leave our grid as ineffective as it is today in Puerto Rico. It would be devastating. They've made recommendations as to what should be done in 2004 and 2008, but very little has been done. Let's take this quick little diagram of the grid and the transmission system. The area that's outlined in blue is the area that we're going to focus on, which are the high voltage transmission lines that go from the generator to the load. Now, you see circling in that is a dotted red line. Solar storms and nuclear EMP cause a current to flow where the dotted red line is, a DC current. That DC current puts the large transformers into half-cycle saturation. The result in layman terms is dirty power. Instead of a nice 60-cycle signal, you get something that's very ragged. So motors, compressors, computers, they don't like that. You see at the top the impact, and we talked a little bit about that, the annual low-level GMD, geomagnetic disturbance for solar storms, causes several $billion annually in the United States. We'll get into that in the next slide. If you look at the next two pictures, that was due to a solar storm in 1989 that the utilities and the agencies are looking at as a possible 100-year solar storm. And that's when Quebec went down with the solar storm. That solar storm was 2 volts per kilometer, the electric field, but the projected solar storms from true 100 years is 20 volts per kilometer, or 10 times worse. To give you an idea, you've all seen the northern lights from solar storms. The northern lights from the 1859 Carrington solar storm was so bright that miners got up in the middle of the night and made breakfast because they thought it was morning. I don't think any of us has seen a solar storm of that magnitude and intensity today. So it can cause damage, and those are pictures of damage to these big transformers. Well, obviously, if a big transformer is damaged, the outage is not going to be for a few days or a few weeks. It's going to take a long time to order a new transformer, get it made, get it shipped, and get it and put it into place. The estimate is 2 to 3 years per transformer for that. The next slide are the 2 studies that I talked about that talk about billions of dollars per year of damage. We didn't do that study. The people that did that study are Zurich Insurance Company, Lockheed Martin, and NOAA. And they correlated the damage to solar storms and came out with these estimates. You say, gee, why can that cause that kind of damage? It caused it because of the harmonics or the dirty power. And most companies or customers that have that damage don't realize what caused it. They may go to their insurance company to get reimbursed, or they may have large deductibles or no insurance at all to cover that. But the insurance companies on these two studies, in 2014, 2015, did a very careful analysis and said, it's real, it's there, it happens every single year. In these studies, this is a graph in where the claims were spread across the different lines of geomagnetic latitude, which are a little bit different than the normal lines of latitude. But there's two things that they came up with. It made virtually no difference whether you were in the southern half of the United States or the northern half of the United States. And the area outlined in red on the right side of that graph covers Minnesota is in that geomagnetic latitude area. That's the boundaries. So you can see there are losses that are occurring in the area where Minnesota is located. In 2012, we had equipment that was studied and tested by the Idaho National Labs in Idaho. They spent $2 million testing equipment, and one of the tests they did was they took these large high voltage transformers and they injected them with quasi-DC current or DC current, which is very, very similar to the solar storms or nuclear EMP. And they found that if you got just above 13 amps of DC current in the neutral, you got into harmonic distortion that was unacceptable. The acceptable standard is 5%, and by the time you got into 50 or 100 amps, you were close to or up to 30% total harmonic distortion. So why is that important? This is actual data from Minnesota starting back in 1972. And the substations that are outlined in yellow show currents from an ordinary level solar storm above those limits. So we know that harmonics are being generated right now on the Minnesota grid. The people at Idaho National Labs found that the harmonics grew and got worse as it went from the generator to the load. They just testified last week in Atlanta and said the total harmonic distortion grew to 75%, which means you had basically junk power. You had terrible power. That's what they discovered in Idaho. Operational procedures, utilities do operational procedures. We found in our analysis that they do very little good to fix the problem. You have to put in the neutral of the transformers a capacitor to stop the DC current. AC current goes through the capacitor, DC current does not. What the utilities do for procedures are things such as they start a bunch of extra generators so they get additional reactive power to try to maintain voltage in the grid. Well, they might keep the grid up, but it does nothing for the harmonics. We did a preliminary analysis using Power World. It's a third-party vendor, and it shows the grid collapse in Minnesota will happen at roughly 5 or 6 volts per kilometer of electric field. In the 100-year solar storm, we are saying would be closer to 18 volts per kilometer. Even if you use the tropical storm standard, if you will, for a 100-year solar storm that the utilities are using, it shows the Minnesota grid will collapse at that level as well, which is the 5 or 6 volts per kilometer. There's 3 excuse me, type of fields for an EMP or solar storm. They're called E1, E2, and E3. E1 is very short, very tall, and it fries computer equipment. E2 is like lightning. And E3 is a big, long, slow wave that has lots of energy in it, and that's what would affect transformers. A complete solution is available for EMP, and an easy complete solution is available for GMD or solar storms, and that's the bottom line, which shows neutral blocking on transformers, which is a device that basically inserts capacitors in the neutral to stop the DC current from flowing. Naruk, back in 2011, passed a board resolution favoring that work should be done to protect the grid. What have the utilities done to date? In 1983, the University of Minnesota, Minnesota Power, and EPRI developed a capacitor solution, just like we're talking. Was never implemented. In 1992, EPRI again studied this and reiterated the capacitor solution is a good idea. Now, why haven't things been done? And a couple things that might hinder progress in this area are there are utility tariffs filed in Minnesota and other states that absolve utilities of liability for anything but their gross negligence. And also utilities at the NERC and FERC level write their own regulations. The utilities through NERC write regulations to regulate themselves and present it to FERC. And FERC can either accept it or reject it, but FERC can't change it and they can't write their own regulations. So it's not a system that might be conducive to quick change with the utilities. And this is just a copy of the Minnesota tariff that's filed. And it just says the company shall not be responsible for any loss or damage resulting from the interruption or disturbance of service for any cause other than gross negligence of the company. So each and every one of you in this room that get electricity from the utilities have agreed to this. Many states are now looking at these issues and saying maybe we should be doing something about it. So there's probably 7 to 9 utilities or states across the country that are either looking at it, holding hearings, passing legislation, etc. The Minnesota House File 2695 supports doing a study to determine, in essence, with transparency, let's see if the state of Minnesota truly is vulnerable and what the consequences of that vulnerability might be and what steps can be taken to protect the grid. And with an eye to also look at maintaining and restoring communication systems after grid damage and emergency planning. the Janney report, and many or some of you may know about it, many of you may not. It's a very old company, large company, and they provide financial advice to individuals to companies. But they have recently looked at the fact that utilities are going to have a lower tax rate. And so to the extent that that lowers the cost, and maybe substantially for utilities in Minnesota and other states, they are suggesting, and you can see by the picture that they put on the front page of the report, which is a solar storm, they are suggesting that utilities take some or all of that money and put it into grid resiliency. It's a one-time opportunity to do it because they say another alternative to spending money on a cause such as this is to give it back to ratepayers, or some or all of it. So they say that consideration should be given, this organization believes, to protecting the grid. In the handouts, if you want to read it, is the full report, the full Janney report, and is also one of the insurance studies, so you can read for yourself what these independent companies, their study and what they came up with. We think on a positive note that it would provide opportunity, if the grid could be protected, to ward off possible lawsuits against utilities. As you can see by some of these headlines, that in other states, such as California, people are saying, well, we have fires in Santa Ana winds every year. In Florida, we have hurricanes every year. Certainly, the utilities can be doing more to at least lessen the effect on business, consumers, hospitals, state, county, et cetera, et cetera. So we think that by doing some work to mitigate and to strengthen the grid, it should be looked at positively to help shield the utilities from these kind of claims. So with that, if you have some questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you very much for your testimony. A quick question. You mentioned the event in 1859. It's commonly called the Carrington effect. Can you just elaborate a little bit on, at the time, obviously, well, electricity and energy was not widely as used as it is right now. What were the effects that people saw in terms of, yes, the sky was lit up, but impact on like telegraph and other sort of technology? What were some of the things that we might see happen here today if that event were to duplicate itself in the future?
Well, there were two solar storms, 100-year solar storms that have occurred. One was in 1859, another one in 1921, and a third one that just missed the Earth in 2012. The way the Earth was turned and the sun was turned, the storm blew out the side of the sun and just missed the Earth. In 1921 and in 1859, there was no grid. So it didn't have any impact in that way, but it had a severe impact on telegraph lines and so forth. And we had seen reports that people got physically injured, maybe even killed, by the tremendous voltage that was caused with telegraph lines. But today, we see that on the grid, there are studies, IEEE and other studies, that would suggest the harmonics are going to damage transformers, generators, SVC banks. SVC is big capacitor banks that help regulate voltage. They cause things like on the grid, the breakers that open lines. Breakers need a zero crossing. And for those of you who aren't electrical engineers, as you get the sine wave of power, each time the power crosses the zero line, that's when the switch will open. Well, what happens when you have a lot of DC current running in the power lines? You can't open breakers. So you could basically, one, either lose control of the grid, or two, it will cause tremendous stress on these breakers. So now you have breakers, you have generators, you have transformers, all of which could be damaged, all of which are big ticket items. And that's why people are afraid that it could take months or years to bring the grid back. It's not a short fix like your neighborhood storm where they've got to fix a few lines and so forth in the back of your house. This is nothing like that whatsoever.
Representative Swazinski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just in general, obviously, we're not alone, would face something like this. What have other countries done? Have other nations addressed this issue at all? Other areas of the country? And then also, you kind of touched on it a little bit with the transformers and I'm just thinking from a manufacturing standpoint, like, let's say you lost a bunch of transformers, like, how long does it take to build a transformer? Like, could you, like, if you lost 100 of them, how long would it take to manufacture whatever? So
That's a very good question. Transformers take approximately 2 years is the estimate to even have one made right now. But that's only if you ordered 1 or 2 or 3. Remember that the transformers have changed from years ago. By the way, the average age of these big transformers on the grid today is 42 years. So they're getting old to begin with and getting stressed to begin with. So the process is engineering has to engineer the new transformer. Then it's got to get put in the queue and get made. Then it's got to get shipped, and most of these places are overseas, get shipped back to the United States. Then it's got to get put on one of these Schnabel cars, these railroad cars that can take a huge weight. And then, in the United States, many of the rail lines no longer can handle that kind of weight. So how do you get this from a ship to over the land to a power plant? And now let's say that you have 300 or 500. The Meditech report done by the Oak Ridge National Lab suggested years ago there'd be at least 300 transformers. People are now saying you could have 1,000 or 2,000 transformers at risk. So how long would it take to get those built? It would be a very difficult issue. And if you had a major solar storm and these plants are located in Europe, does the United States come first or do the foreign countries come first to get the transformers? So there are many questions raised by this kind of damage.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, sir, you alluded to the idea that with the tax bill that was recently passed in D.C., there will be cost savings to our electric utilities. You've outlined quite a extensive damage to the Minnesota power grid. Do you have an idea of what the actual cost to Minnesota and the utilities? I don't know, I can't even track how many utilities, munis and co-ops and everything else we have, what that cost would be. I've heard, I think the chairman has talked about a $200 million savings to the Minnesota ratepayers. Would that cover that getting ready for this?
We have not done a study. The cost to protect against EMP, because you have to do E1, E2, and E3, is certainly going to be more. But if you started out doing just E3 for the solar storms, the cost would be much less. And there's no wasted dollars, because what you simply do is the protection you put on for E3, you just build on that in order to protect for the E1 and E2 and for the nuclear side of it. Now, There was a study some years ago by PJM, and that's a transmission organization on the East Coast. And there's a concept called uneconomic dispatch. So the utilities right now in some parts of the country, and they do this on the East Coast, when there's a solar storm warning, they go into uneconomic dispatch, which means they back down the generation on baseload units that are cheaper, and they fire up a whole bunch of generators at partial load. So they have reactive power to help against a grid collapse because of voltage collapse. Well, when they start all these little generators on the spot market, the cost is 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 times higher per kilowatt hour for that energy. Some people have made estimates that say you could protect the grid from just solar storms on the cost savings over 2 years from uneconomic dispatch alone. And so, but once again, we talked about earlier how the risk of loss is on the customer. Currently, the utilities, through their fuel clause adjustment, when they have to go into uneconomic dispatch and it costs them more money, they just simply pass that cost on to all the consumers. All of us in this room pay for that when they do that. So that cost alone, it is estimated, just that one thing. Now look at if the utilities didn't have damage to the generators or transformers or their breakers, and they could prevent that loss. How much is that worth? So we think there's significant dollars that could be achieved to both back to the utility and to the consumer by fixing the grid. And you could simply start for sure with solar storms, which would be a fairly modest investment.
Representative Mahoney, we've reached the end of our time, but go ahead.
Well, you haven't, thank you, Mr. Chair, and the amazing thing is I pretty much followed everything you actually said there. My question then would be, most of these large and small utility companies, co-ops, and munis are insured. It's an insurance cost to them. They're going to file a claim. Other than apparently 3 or 4 years of discomfort, why am I paying for it? Why are my ratepayers paying for it? Why aren't the insurers paying for it?
And again, if you could offer a brief answer, sir, because Representative Quam, I think that was a quick question as well. So the testifier.
Well, you have a whole bunch of questions there in one. And
It's more of a statement than
yeah, all right.
Representative Clemson, we're at the end of our time. Do you have a quick question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for brevity, I've got some questions maybe the testifier offline compile and pass on to it. You touched upon the uneconomic dispatch requirement, and if you've got any materials as to what baseline capacity requirements would be needed for the grid to be able to have that capability. In other words, if we drop below a certain percentage of baseline, we no longer really have that capability. Any information about CAP 2020, which was, recently designed, implemented, and in construction, what type of improvements or protections were included, since the reference studies were from last century, and this, I assume, is well known in the industry. So if you could have that information. And then I'm confused because in some of the materials that the committee received, there are over a dozen transformer manufacturing locations in North America. And if you could.
Hold on.
Yes, many of them
Hold
are.
on. We speak one at a time here. So Representative Quam, finish up, and then we'll go to the
Right.
testifier.
And so if there can be some documentation of the capability of these, North American facilities, because reference were made at international, and, so we could have a better idea of what the staged effects might be. Again, all of these, if you can give us a material, since time's expired, pass on to the committee for us to get later.
So
We
testifier,
can-
if I could ask you a favor, I'm going to have Mr. Glon get your contact information, and what we'll do is we're going to take that and distribute it to all the members of the committee, because I think other members do have additional questions, and then if possible, if that information's relevant, it's probably information and knowledge that's better contained in writing than verbally, just given the technical and the time constraints we have now. Would you feel comfortable sharing your contact information with the?
Yes, we can supply some of the studies and the articles and various things that we have. I could address real quickly the transformer thing. Transformer manufacturers have just recently started building several plants in the United States. You have to be careful because many of those don't build the ultra-high voltage, really large transformers. They build other ones, but the really big ones, most of those are overseas.
Thank you very much for your testimony, sir. And again, Mr. Glon, if you could get his contact information, we'll make sure to distribute that to the committee, because I'm sure there will be numerous follow-up questions. So thank you again. I appreciate your
Very good.
testimony.
Thank you.
Next is we have some information on propane infrastructure needs. Roger Leider from the Minnesota Propane Association, come on down.
Those were great questions.
And members, while we're changing testifiers, please remember to fill out your blue sheets and get those to me today. Thank you. Bill, do you have his contact information already? Okay. Welcome to the committee, sir. Please state your name for the record and proceed. Welcome to the commission. Please
I'm
state your
Roger
name for the
Leider, the
record and
Executive
proceed with
Director
testimony.
for the Minnesota Propane Association, and been asked to come and kind of give a upbrief on the state of the propane industry, particularly as it relates to the state of Minnesota, but I'll do a little more than that as we move along. Thank you for asking me to be here. If I had to sum it up in one word, as compared to appearing before this commission probably 4 years ago in the polar vortex winter, the state of the propane industry is pretty good. We're very happy with the changes we've made, and you're going to see a lot of the differences as we start to go through the slides, and I'm able to discuss those. I'm going to cover some very brief things on the current propane supply, recent supply history in the upper Midwest and in the United States, changes in production, changes in infrastructure, and what that means for the state of Minnesota and the 233,000 propane users that we have. Propane supply, you're seeing a chart up above that kind of shows a bell curve. It kind of looks like the last 2 days of the stock market. We don't. But it's something that occurs pretty much in this realm every year. The gray shaded area that you see is the 5-year range. That's the highs and lows, the inventory that we've had in the past 5 years. And the blue line is where we're at this year. We're affected by many things. If you're able to look at that and you see about September of 2017, you see a very sharp blip in the inventory. That's nationwide inventory. That's about the time we had hurricanes that hit Houston. Houston is the main port where propane is exported out of the United States. They were shut down for a period of time. Propane supply built rapidly. It quickly went back down as soon as the markets, as the shipping ports were reopened, and went back. But we're pretty much into a area where we're normal. I highlighted a few things on this next chart, which basically shows us the highs and lows over the last 10 years. And our propane supply that we have in the United States this year, at the end of January, was 53 million barrels of propane in supply. The Conway, Kansas area is important for us because that is where much of our propane, about 40% of our propane, comes via pipeline into Minnesota from that area. But you can see the highs and lows and see what we're right now tracking about in the average range of propane supply. And that's good. It's estimated right now that about 60% of all the propane that we use in the state of Minnesota comes from Canada. Most of that is by rail. The remainder comes from Conway, Kansas by pipeline or is produced locally at places such as Flint Hills Refinery at Pine Bend or Plains Marketing Refinery in Superior, Wisconsin, are areas where we also produce. You think about that and you start to wonder, why are we importing so much propane in this area? And it's a matter of logistics. Propane is now become, the United States has become the #1 exporter and producer of propane in the world. And that has all changed in the last 6 to 10 years, and primarily now in the last 6 years as far as being the world's largest exporter. The growth in production has resulted in increased international demand. Our product that we produce here is sent all over the world, especially to the destinations that are in China and Japan or on the Asian rim. The United States is probably it is the #1 supplier of propane for Latin American countries, supplanting everything that came out of the Middle East just a few short years ago. The growing export demand of both natural gas and natural gas liquids, along with propane fuels, it's increased production here in the United States. All the demand has increased that production, and it has helped stabilize the supply here, and it's helped stabilize the market as far as pricing. You can see here, that's the chart that starts to show the difference in what we have in exports in the United States. Virtually going from very little up through 2008, 2010. And about 2012, exports began to take off, and they started to go up rapidly. Japan became a very stable market. China became a very good market for importing propane. Other Asian or areas, countries such as India also get it from the United States. You would think that possibly they would get their product from some of the Middle East countries that are much closer for them, less transportation. But they're also finding that the market here in the United States is much more stable because of our political system is more stable, usually more stable. Not so sure some days. Right now,
I'm sure the military parade will straighten that all out. Don't worry.
Can we get tickets to that?
To the testifier.
so propane availability is went up along with production, and even though we're exporting a lot, right now we export as much propane from the United States as we use. And that's included everything we use for homes, farms, and businesses across the country, what we use for auto gas, automobiles, and also in production. All the plastic production, polypropylene, all the other industrial uses that there are for propane, all of that added together, we export that amount of propane every single year, every day. And so it's we have a very large supply of propane here in the United States, and it's clean, good, clean burning fuel. Our goal is to find more uses for it and to keep it here. You can see here that the ships that move propane and what's changed in the export market. This is one of the older ships. This was a smaller ship that 10 years ago could go through the Panama Canal. The very large ships, which is what you're seeing here, very large gas transports, could not go through the Panama Canal. They had to go all the way around the tip of South America and make their way back up to China and Japan, adding about 10 to 12 days to their trip at about $150,000 a day for operation of the ship, or $1 million to $2 million extra cost. Now, by being able to go through the Panama Canal, they're able to save time, save money, and it's reduced our costs, and of course, that's increased the demand for American propane all over the world. So that has really changed now that the Panama Canal has been open to the large transport ships. There's pretty important. The shift in propane transportation here in Minnesota. 4 years ago, and I'm just going to flip ahead one slide, we had a very important part of our propane supply was the Cochin pipeline. It came from Edmonton, Alberta, came into the United States through North Dakota, supplied propane and ethane into the United States for various uses. They found that it was being underutilized in that way. So the pipeline asked permission, received permission to reverse that pipeline. That's what was happening in the winter of 2013-14, is that pipeline was operating at about 50% capacity. It was reversing, and now that pipeline sends what they call light ends or distillates from the Chicago area back up into Canada. And it's used to dilute heavy crude oil to be shipped over pipelines all over the United States and North America. So the Cochin pipeline was reversed in May of 2014. That carried about 35 to 40% of our propane here. Rail has replaced the Cochin pipeline load. Rail is much more difficult to manage than a pipeline. It's in reliability and in logistics. Propane is at a very competitive disadvantage to more predictable commodities such as grain and coal and oil. Rail is cheaper for us to develop, though. A mile of pipeline is, it runs about $1.2 million per mile to put in pipeline. We can put in for $3 to $4 million, we can put in a very good rail facility here in the United States. So rail is cheaper to develop, but it comes with some caveats, of course, with the reliability. And rail terminals can be put closer to where we need it. You're not going to put multiple pipelines around the state of Minnesota, but we can put multiple rail facilities.
And Mr. Leider, in Minnesota, we don't build pipelines anymore, so
No,
that's.
No, yeah. I hear you. The loss of pipeline service necessitates increased storage capacity at both the marketer and the consumer levels. All of this is things that we found coming off the year polar vortex, and that was probably one of the worst winters of my life. But coming out of that, our industry has really learned a lot. And now they're moving forward and building a much more dependable infrastructure system that's going to help and serve the state of Minnesota. Transportation storage, what's changed? More rail facilities around Minnesota. Glenwood, Minnesota, Rockville, Benson, Proctor, Rush City. Those are some major public type facilities where a lot of people bring in product by rail, and marketers can go and pick up their supply needs there. Many private systems expanded since 2014. We have some cooperatives that maybe could unload one rail car at a time and store enough to 2 to 3 rail cars in storage, maybe 100,000 gallons. Now they have 500,000 gallons and can unload 3 rail cars at a time. A facility like Rockville unloads 5 rail cars at a time, 10 rail cars every 4 hours. Before the crop grind season came this past fall, between St. Cloud, Minnesota and Rockville, they had staged over 200 rail cars of propane, 30,000 gallons apiece. They went through that 200 rail cars in less than 10 days. That kind of demand. That's one facility. You add Glenwood, Benson, and all the others, and we can see the importance of what rail has brought to us. Storage facilities around the state have expanded. Many marketers, most marketers increase storage, almost all, and many have doubled what they have at their own home facilities. Large storage of many of the rail facilities have expanded. Large farmers and businesses have increased their in-house storage, what they have on their site, so they can weather any kind of delay in transportation. Marketers increased home user storage. Many homes, and before they would have a 250 to 500 gallon propane tank. In many areas, they are putting 1,000 gallon tanks, so they can make 2 deliveries a year, not 4 or 5. transportation becomes a big issue, and we start to think about it, and I wrote down at the bottom that 100 transport loads equals 1 million gallons. The month of November, during the peak crop drying season, we sold 98 million gallons of propane in the state of Minnesota. That's almost 10,000 transport loads that needed to be moved around. What we had for a very short period of time in the month of November and the first week of January this year was not any kind of supply shortage, but we do have transportation shortages from time to time. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but we'll hopefully catch them here. Number one, there's a nationwide shortage of drivers. We're finding that from almost every industry. The Trucking Industry Association will tell you the same thing, that you go to almost any truck company and there's signs out, drivers want it. It's needed all over. We add a little bit of caveat to it when we're starting to deal with propane as a hazardous material, is that those drivers must go through drug and alcohol screenings regularly, and they must be able to pass an FBI background check. So it gets to be a tighter market as we do that as well. There's less random assets available. 4 years ago, when we went through the polar vortex year, we were able to bring in 50 or more transport drivers and equipment from other parts of the country to help us get through that time, that difficult winter. Those assets aren't available. Our people called places this fall in November and say, gee, have you got extra trucks in Georgia? Have you got extra trucks in Alabama? And the answer was no. We're tapped out. There's not extra people to send like there was 4 years ago. Rail delivery dependability, we touched on it before. Rail transport in cold weather. This year has been we think it's been cold because it's been colder than the last 2-3 years, but we're only about 1% colder this year to date since July 1 than average. So we're pretty much an average winter. But when it does get to be 20 below zero in places like North Dakota and Canada, the trains that would normally carry 100 cars can't pull 100 cars. They can only pull about 50. The airlines, the air systems on the trains are unable to maintain pressure, releasing the brakes. They also then have to reduce speeds because they're worried about the tracks that expand and contract with temperature. And so they reduce speed, they go a little slower, so it also builds into a little bit more planning that we have to do, and besides the fact that we're competing against many other products for that rail space. The other parts is when you have a whole train load, you have 50 cars or 100 cars, and there's 20 propane cars on it, and they're headed towards Illinois from Canada. They don't want to stop in Minneapolis and drop off the 20 propane cars. So a lot of times our guys and our marketers out there will find that they're looking at the map, looking at their computers, and say, yes, I have 10 propane cars coming. And they just went through Minneapolis, and now they're near Chicago. And then they get back to Des Moines, and then eventually they get back to Minneapolis. But a lot of times it's a little difficult sometimes to stop that train to let off the 10 cars that we need. So it's a little different than the pipeline system. We're still competing for pipeline space. 40% or more of our product comes up the pipeline from Conway, Kansas. We compete on that line with butanes all the time, which are used in gasoline production here in the Twin Cities. So it's a batch line, and we get every other day we're getting propane up, but we can't keep up with that amount of pipeline space. Crop drying frequently overlaps with the heating season. It did this year. We moved right out of crop drying right into full-fledged heating season. Natural gas interruptible systems is another big point. This last week of December, from about the 20th of December to about the 8th of January, many interruptible natural gas customers, industry, companies that are in production, were asked to shut down their natural gas, turn on their backup supply. The backup supply is often propane. All of a sudden, now that adds a stress into a system when we're right at our peak amount of usage. Granted, our marketers love to sell the extra product, but it does cause a stress on the system. Spikes in demand for propane and maintenance from dealers at the same time. All little issues that go into the system. Looking at it though, when we start to look at it, and talking about storage up here right now, but from the first week of October through now, we have delivered more propane in the state of Minnesota this winter than we did in the polar vortex winter. So it's moving much, much better. The infrastructure has gotten better. Minnesota has about 450 propane bulk plants around the state. If each one of those bulk plants averages 40,000 gallons of storage, and I think that's fairly close, if we received no deliveries tomorrow, we would have about 4 to 6 days of supply. Our biggest supply looms in the backyards and behind the factories and on the farms of the people in the state of Minnesota. We have 233,000 homes, farms, and businesses. About 13.5% of those of the homes in Minnesota are heated with propane. If each installation has 400 gallons of usable storage, that's 93 million gallons. In other words, you've got about 80 to 90 days of supply in the backyards and in the supply for that homeowners have. But it's being used all the time. We continue to encourage consumers to work on the top half of their propane tanks. The Department of Commerce this year asked again this fall about sending out messages about keep fill, scheduled delivery, and other programs that help people keep their tanks full. And we of course encourage them to do that and partner with them in writing the messaging. It's important for us to be able to do that. So all in all, we look at where propane is this fall and where we're at, and it's a lot better than we were 4 years ago. Propane exports in review spur greater production. They're instrumental in increasing and stabilizing the overall supply and price. As you remember, during the polar vortex year, we heard the sad tales of some people being charged $4 and $5 a gallon for propane. Right now the gas propane has went up about 25 cents over what it was a year ago, but we're still in the $1.50 to $1.75 range by the shop reports. Propane marketers need to continue to, on a constant basis, evaluate their supply, transportation, and delivery plans. We are educating them constantly on the things they need to do and the things that they can do. Some things we can't change, but there are things we can. Increasing storage, having good rolling stock, ensuring that their customers are full ahead of time. Crop drying is hard to plan for. That's something that's not going to change. We often don't know until the first week of October of what the crop drying season is going to look like. A couple of years ago, it looked like we were going to have a huge crop drying season. And then in the last 2 weeks of September, turned 75 degrees with some nice, warm, dry winds. All evaporated. Good for the farmers.
Good, hit your mute button and see if you
I think it's a summer storm.
if you want to hit your mute button.
That pulse. We're continuing to encourage residential customers to utilize summer fill, pre-buy, and scheduled delivery programs. We're dealing with the wild card of interruptible natural gas systems, and that will always be difficult. Asking for and receiving rail priority during peak season is important. All these things will help. A couple things that I didn't write down that could play into it. And I know this is a issue that usually gets a quick look and dismissed, but increasing the load size for transports in the state of Minnesota. Both North and South Dakota and Canada allow their transports to carry 97,000 pounds. Minnesota is at 80. By having that, we can haul more product at one time, And they're also then, you're saying that 9 drivers can do what 10 could do before. And as we're having driver and equipment and personnel shortages across the country, this could be a key component. So those are things that we see and that are out there. And with that, Mr. Chairman, concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you for your presentation, and on behalf of all of us, thank you to you and the members of the Minnesota Propane Association for all the work you put in the last couple of years. Back in the polar vortex problems, it was not a popular answer, but the truth of the matter was that we just had really bad luck. It wasn't a lack of planning. It wasn't anyone's fault. We just had some really bad luck that hit us at the same time. But you and your members have responded very well, and that's demonstrated itself this year during the number of heating days we've had. A couple of quick questions for you. Do we get anything from Mont Bellevue up here?
I couldn't hear you, sir.
Mont Bellevue. Do we
From
get?
Bellevue, Texas?
Yeah.
No, we have not get any product from there. All the pipelines seem to flow, of course, from Conway, Kansas, south to Mont Bellevue, Texas, where they load the ships. And the only way we could get product out of there would be by rail or by truck. And we haven't had to do that since 2014, and we hope we don't have to do that again.
In the event of a supply disruption on the pipeline between Conway and here, is there a redundant path for that product to flow?
The only other path that they have between Conway coming north is there's an east leg to the Enterprise pipeline that flows through the eastern part of Iowa and on up into Wisconsin. So they could increase flow into those lines at that point. Other than that, it would probably mean that trucks from here would have to go drive to Conway, Kansas to get product if there was something that happened, or drive to a terminal south, depending on where the break in the line would be. We hope that doesn't happen.
Then my final question is, obviously you mentioned there's important things like storage. The more storage there is, the more flexibility it gives us, the more product people accept when they don't need it. For example, in the summer as opposed to winter, puts less stress on the system. Is there anything, I mean, should the legislature be looking at incentivizing more storage, providing more residential customers or on the industrial side to beef that up? And if so, do you have any suggestions on how we would do that?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I really think that probably the place that the incentives would need to go would be to the marketers. We think the spot where we need the most increase in storage is at the marketer level. We'd like to increase that 5 to 6 days of supply in the worst possible conditions to something more in the 10 days of supply. So any type of incentive that we could do at that point to write it off and tax credits of some nature, that's where that would be helpful.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Representative Swazinski and then Kwon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just maybe you kind of touched on it, but we did have a little bit of a trucking issue during the how was that relief and how did that kind of work through?
The trucking issue, at both times this year where we needed a little bit of assistance, first came in the crop drying season, and we asked for and received an hours of service relief from the governor's office. For basic edification, the hours of service, a truck driver can drive 11 hours a day and work 14 hours per day. During some of those times, the truck drivers would pull into a terminal and have to sit for 4 hours before they could fill. That goes against their 14 hours of duty. And so they would often only be able to haul 1 or 2 loads in a day, where normally they could haul at least 3. And so by having relief from hours of service, they were able to use that time as rest time, keep their trucks rolling much longer and moving forward. And that's the key part that's important there. And that's been one of the only tools we have to deal with trucking shortages when we're in that type of situation. The second system came along right after Christmas, and I worked with the governor's office and Department of Commerce on issuing an hours of service, unbeknownst to me at the very same time, the National Propane Association and the National Fuel Oil Dealers Association was working in Washington, D.C. And the same day the governor issued an hours of service exemption here for 14 days, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration issued one region-wide, basically everything from North Dakota all the way down to Arizona and east. All 4 major regions of the United States will be given an hours of service exemption for the delivery of propane and fuel oil. They've just extended it again today for the 3rd time to the end of the month. My marketers are telling me and my transporters are telling me they don't need it and they're not using it. That's something that is just not necessary. They've got the kinks worked out by this time in the season, and so that's okay. We were very, very surprised that they did it that broadly across the country. It was the first time in my too many years in the propane industry, 40-some years, that I've seen any national, regional hours of service exemption, except in the case of something like the hurricanes or storms.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I keep hearing, winter and heating and ag or crop utilization is, and I hear a lot of it comes from down south. We seem to have a fairly decent possibility that North Dakota could maybe produce propane, with local resources there, which would shorten the distance for transit, rail, truck, et cetera. Has there been a look regionally how we can address this? Because it's a very perennial problem that keeps coming up. And I would think that would also help with, you touched on the interruptible supply for the NG users. Well, I think they're still, flaring, and, they've got excess capacity of NG out of there, which could, avoid that issue too. So what entity is looking at a comprehensive solution to both supply, transportation, and avoidance with this problem?
Representative Quam, Mr. Chairman, the issues that you see out there with flaring and those are issues that are obviously dealing with the National Energy Administration as they allow flaring for 1 year after a well is put in, and they're flaring out more than propane. It's natural gas, it's butane, it's ethane, it's all the natural gas liquids. They are finding that market, they're trying to capture that faster and faster all the time, and there is a collection process out there for doing that. Moving that product, once it's been refined into propane or butane or ethane, and moving it to the proper place is a different ballgame. Again, there's not enough production for consistent delivery for a propane pipeline to bring it to Minnesota. When we talked to the marketers in North Dakota and asked them if they were having any issues this fall, and we said you shouldn't because you've got a lot of propane right in your backyard, and the finding out that product was already committed. Somebody else got a monthly commitment and a contract, and a lot of that product was loaded on rail and shipped to Texas, shipped to Mexico, shipped to many other places. And so while North Dakotans had product right in their backyard, they were running through the same issues of shortages as anyone else, or distribution shortages, supply, transportation. But,
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Representative Mahoney.
2 questions. You said that you get pipeline deliveries every other day, I think, or something alluded to that. What size pipe is that? Just for my own personal note, what size pipes are you using for propane? And how many pipelines are carrying propane in the state of Minnesota?
Mr. Leider.
Representative Mahoney, Mr. Chairman, there is one pipeline that brings product into the state of Minnesota that comes from Conway, and that's the Enterprise Pipeline. And that's the batch line. That's the only one that comes here at this time. And it has terminals in the Pine Bend area, Jackson, Minnesota, and Vernon Center. Vernon Center is a very large hub at this time for propane delivery in southern Minnesota.
You know how big that line is?
Senator Mahoney.
That's probably,
Mr. Leider.
my guess off the top of my head would be it's probably about an 8-inch line.
Any other questions or comments from members of the committee? Any closing comments, Mr. Leider?
No other comments, thank you.
Well, thank you again for the work that you and your members have done on this. It's a much improved situation compared back to the 4 years ago. So, with that, members, that completes our agenda for the day. Again, please make sure to fill out your blue sheets and get those to me today. Otherwise, we'll be seeing people in a month or so. If you have any other additional items for the LEC to be looking at, please feel free to forward them to either myself or to Senator Osmek. So with that, we are adjourned.